Welcome to Destination Linux, the shadowy X-Files of open source investigation, where every commit is a step closer to the truth that's out there. I'm your host, or Agent Mulder this week, Ryan, chasing the mysteries of code with my trusty team of tech sleuths ready to uncover the Linux conspiracy. Jill is our Agent Scully, sharp-minded, code-dissecting skeptic. Her creed: if it's not open source, it's just a syndicate smokescreen. I've heard Jill say that all the time. Constantly.
That's her motto.
That's her creed, yeah.
Yeah.
Michael is our lone maverick, customizing KDE like it's UFO tech, and always ready to expose proprietary lies. His mantra: trust no binary, only source. I don't know if that makes sense. The binary, trust no binary.
I mean, technically, it depends on how you phrase it. It's like, is it a binary program, or is it like, don't trust binary zeros and ones and like that?
Never trust binary.
Yeah, never trust binary in general.
That's a good motto too. This week's case, we're probing the enigmatic signals from the Red Hat Summit 2025, which Michael and I just returned from.
That's right. It was very enigmatic.
Good job, Michael.
Enigmatic.
Diving into the add water applications.
Yes.
Open source, he'll get it eventually, folks. Open source X Factor, and chasing down a few extra tech anomalies that we're about to blow the lid off. So grab your flashlight, sync your repos, and remember, in open source, the truth is in the code. Proprietary just keeps it buried. Let's crack the case. This is Destination Linux. This week in our community feedback, we have feedback that comes from David, who says, I cannot believe that Jill, finally some negative feedback for Jill, you know?
I know, right?
Yeah. Let's see what they have to say. They can't believe that Jill, hasn't commented on the YouTube video I sent last week. It's not as negative as I thought it might be. It's cuter than 100 Jills giggling in unison. Okay. Would you rather fight 100 giggling Jills or 1,000 penguins? Michael?
I have no idea.
Which one?
I mean, the 100 giggling Jills would probably be easiest because she'd just be giggling the whole time and you wouldn't have to fight.
Aww.
Jill, what do you think?
Well, thank you so much, David. I love this. And the reason I didn't get it is because that email address sometimes doesn't come to me. So
yeah.
Whoa, she threw me under the bus again, Ryan.
But Michael did forward it to me later.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we do our best to get your gloating comments to Jill, but there's so many it overflows our server. And,
Sometimes the forward button doesn't work anymore, you know?
Aw. Yeah. Well, it's the video is so cute. It's actually a really very cute little boy asking a NASA astronaut if he can do a one-fingered push-up. LOL. And the astronaut shows him not only can he do a regular push-up, a one-fingered push-up, but doesn't have to use hands at all to do a push-up in space.
Let's make it clear that they are in space at the time.
This wasn't very cute to me. It was embarrassing. Like, the astronaut's weak. His push-ups were pathetic, and I think he could do... Yeah, weak thumbs, totally. I think he could do better than that.
How dare you, Jill? Throw it back at me. Wow. I can do at least 1,000 push-ups in space.
Yeah.
Space. I don't know. I bet you couldn't do 1,000 push-ups in space.
But thank you very much, David. I loved it, and I'm glad I finally got to see it.
All right, Jill, would you rather fight 100 giggling Jills or 1,000 penguins?
1,000 penguins.
Wow. Okay. Jill has a lot of trust in herself. She's like, 1,000 of me could take over the world. 100 of me could take over the world. What do you mean? All right. Because that was short, we have another community feedback. And plus, we were at Summit last week. So we got catch up from last week. We got lots of...
Yeah, we missed an episode, technically, yeah.
John says, hi, Michael, Jill, and welcome, Wendy. So they must be referring to that episode where Wendy was hosting that week. They say, I felt that both Apple and Microsoft have been strolling and lately full out running down the wrong path for many years. I left Windows a while back and only installed 11 for a year to complete my bachelor's degree. A lot of people haven't installed Windows to do their college degrees, which is humorous. Coursework was completed, and the next day, Adobe account was closed, and Fedora 41 was installed on my machine. I have no desire to return to Windows. On the Macintosh side, I'm so frustrated with Apple to actually remove my Apple ID account. They actually took note of that, and they're sending some agents your way to make sure you re-enable that account. Everything I want to do is readily doable on Linux. My machine is now Fedora 42, and it's fairly stable. For the future, I may look into moving into Hyperland from KDE, but will weigh pros and cons. I really have loved using Linux since around 1993 when I first found out about Linux. Before that, I was on DOS learning Unix, specifically Solaris, HPUX, and AIX. I do program, so in the area of development, these tools are running fine on Fedora. I just got DaVinci Resolve and Unreal Engine 5 running. These two apps are the only reasons I would use any other platform, and they are fine on Fedora. Gaming is also getting better all the time. There you go, John. Really awesome feedback, and appreciate you sharing your story there. Interesting story I have, Michael, kind of related to this is when we got back from Red Hat Summit, I was like, man, there's so much cool stuff going on. We talked to the Fedora team, of course. I was like, I want to install the latest Fedora. I haven't played with it in a long time. Turns out I actually haven't played with it since Fedora 38. And I know this because I went to install Fedora, downloaded the ISO. I was in Zorin, rebooted my machine, went to the boot screen and realized, oh, there's already a Fedora installed on the machine that I haven't used since Fedora 38. So
that's an interesting thing that you had Fedora but didn't know about it, but
didn't remember.
It actually is more testament to the fact that Ryan used to be a distro hopper to a point of annoying me because he would do it right before the show within like 5 minutes, multiple times making the show late because of the fact that he successfully making the show late. Yes, exactly. And so it's interesting that the fact that he's actually not distro hopping these days, and I am, which is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So
you kind of go through phases in Linux where you stop, you start, and some people stay. Yeah. But I think the interesting thing for me was I tried to just do DNF update. That didn't work. But I just did the release 42 and rebooted, and boom, I'm in Fedora 42, and the whole system was fully upgraded. So
nice.
That is not supposed to work.
That's pretty impressive, I think.
So I'm very curious because that is not supposed to work.
I'm in it right now, in fact.
Very scary. So the way it's supposed to work is that you would go every 2 releases. So you'd go from 38 and then update to 40, and then from 40 to 42 and stuff like that. You could go between, you're not supposed to jump more than 2. Apparently you can jump 4. This is not recommended. Ryan is just a crazy person. So if you want to do it, you can feel free to try it.
As an Arch user, did you think I was going to follow the rules? No.
I don't think you even looked up what the rules were, and you just did it anyway.
You just did crap and made it work.
Well, Ryan, you and Michael switched roles. I mean, Fedora 38, come on. You didn't update? What happened with that? It's usually Michael that updates.
No update,
I didn't know it existed. So it was like... I think when I installed Zorin, I thought I was overwriting Fedora when I did it because I have so many drives in this machine. So I thought it was gone. And then when I started looking through, I'm like, there's this other drive here and it says Fedora. And so there you go. I've got Fedora on there. So
nice.
Enjoying it. Fedora is awesome. All the distros are so awesome now. It's hard to be like, oh, wow, this one's awesome. That's all I'd be saying. Like, how's Ubuntu awesome? How's Fedora awesome? How's Zorin awesome? I mean, it's kind of hard now to really...
A lot of distros have gotten to the point where they're just really nice to use and there's really hardly anything to complain about. But there is something that you might want to know if you're getting into Fedora and for the first time. There are some things that you might want to do after you've installed. And I just so happen to have made a video about things you should do after installing Fedora 42. So Ryan, you should check that out.
Does that include changing your wallpaper? Because that I got done right away.
That is things that you will do versus what you should do.
Oh, so got you.
That's why I didn't bother to put that in because I knew you would put Batman as your wallpaper. Was it Batman?
It's Batman. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Shocking.
That's what I thought.
You know what? You may think you know me, and as Linux users, we know everything. We know what's up, Michael.
We do.
Security is non-negotiable for us.
That's fact.
That's a fact. But with threats getting smarter, your security tools need to keep pace without dragging your system down. Traditional agents, they slow you down and leave blind spots. It's time for a better approach. And we got to see that better approach live at the Red Hat Summit. We went to the Sandfly booth. We got to see them going in and doing detections on, well, we'll have a video out there and you can go watch it. It's pretty awesome. It's even more awesome than I expected it to be awesome. So
yeah, exactly.
It's awesome times 10.
We'll have a video on Ryan's channel specifically about the things that they were demoing and stuff like that. It's very cool.
Yep. And that's why Destination Linux is proud to be sponsored by Sandfly Security, revolutionary agentless platform designed for Linux. Go to destinationlinux.net/Sandfly and see how Sandfly can transform your security strategy. Sandfly doesn't just detect and respond, it revolutionizes security with SSH key tracking, password auditing, drift detection, covering threats from every angle. Whether your systems are in the cloud, on premises, or embedded devices, Sandfly ensures they're all secure without the headaches of an agent-based solution. Listen to what Celinda Lakamgi says from Tate Communications. Sandfly addresses a serious security gap in the industry. Intrusion detection on Linux platforms. The best part of Sandfly is its agentless nature, making it a versatile application for any Linux environment. Experience security that's not just effective, but gives you peace of mind. No agents, no downtime, just cutting edge protection.
That's right. And with Sandfly, you can get a discount on the Home Edition just by being a listener of Destination Linux. So you can use the coupon code Destination50 when you sign up for the Home Edition. You get 50% off your entire subscription. So go do that. DestinationLinux.net/Sandfly. That's DestinationLinux.net/SANDFLY.
Now, Michael and I mentioned we just got back from Red Hat Summit, and we're going to have videos on both of our channels. I have some shorts out there. Michael has some shorts out there. Michael Tunnell channel, Das Geek channel. That's where you're going to want to go subscribe to right now. If you're not subscribed, what's wrong with you? First of all, what do you eat? Cheeto Puffs instead of the hard Cheetos? Weirdo. So go subscribe. And then we're going to just do a quick recap here, though, of some of the experience.
You like cupcakes instead of muffins?
Yeah.
Weirdo.
What? Wait, no. We had such a good time there, Jill. That we asked about you constantly, by the way. Everybody was like, where's Jill? Where's Jill? We're like, she's not here. Leave us alone.
Even when Jill's not there, we still have to answer, where's Jill?
Yeah. So you were missed, Jill.
Aww.
So
Yeah,
hopefully one day we'll get you to the Red Hat
awesome.
Summit. But Katie and Callie there made the entire trip so enjoyable. Everything was well organized, which is very important for Michael and I, who are very disorganized by nature. So
I am incredibly organized when someone tells me what to do.
Yes. And so they, unfortunately, were very organized and kept us on track. And we got to run into the Jupiter Broadcasting team.
That's right.
Yay.
That was fun.
Unlike what most people thought, we did not have an all-out brawl. However,
of course, we didn't need to have an all-out brawl. We had a tournament. It was a tournament. It was a boxing tournament that we had, and of course, I won. And
you won. Oh man, sorry, that cracked me up. But seriously, we ran into the Jupiter team.
What?
And Michael, I mean, you're a lot of things, but a fighter.
I am a fighter.
I would not choose my champion.
Tough.
Let me put it that way. Like
I volunteer as tribute.
I would choose Jill over you for sure, because Jill's trained in martial arts.
What about 100 Jills?
100 Jills would take on the world.
I know a little bit of Ting Sudo.
Look at her throwing out the real martial art words and stuff. That's scary.
Yeah.
So, we had some fun there, and that's in our videos as well. If you want to see the altercations, the fights with Jupiter Broadcasting, because, it was on. As soon as we saw them, we were like,
it was on like Donkey Kong.
It was on like Donkey Kong. We got lots of behind the scenes, with the engineers. We got lots of discussions with directors and VPs. And so we've got so many awesome interviews lined up that will be on this show of people coming from incredible industries. In fact, one of the people, Michael, we ran into is responsible for a lot of the development of the cloud itself. That was an interesting interview for sure.
Also, this is a person who is in charge with Cove, because we talked to him about Cove, and you can find it in my video. There's a small snippet from the the expo hall, but also we're going to have him come on the show to tell us his story because it is fascinating. We were able to get, a little bit more time with him. And this was actually kind of funny because once we were done with the conversation with him, we then realized that he was leaving and a bunch of other people from the booth were leaving. We had just accidentally timed it perfect. So that was great. But we have like the stuff you see in my video is going to be like maybe 20% of the awesomeness that we could have put on, but we just didn't have the ability to do the recording for that long. So we're going to have him come on the show and we're going to talk to him about his involvement with, helping create the cloud and all the awesome stuff he's doing. And the fact that if you probably haven't heard of Cove because they're pretty new, but they're impactful in a lot of ways. And what's crazy is that the software turns a meme into a reality. And this is not a joke. They make it possible to distribute your memory. So you can have physical hardware that your computer doesn't have directly on it connected to other hardware. I mean, this is more like a data center thing, but still overall it's possible where you can take the RAM of another computer and use it for jobs on another computer. It's crazy. It effectively makes the meme of download more RAM a reality, and that's just insane.
I think the insane part is not just that you can do it, but they can do it with the latency of RAM on a bus. Yes, I know everyone's going to write in and say that's impossible, and I agree. I sat there and walked through the statistics. In fact, they were shutting down the booth. They packed everything up. They unpacked it all for us and pulled out their third-party reports and everything else showing the speed tests. And well, we'll talk about it when we have them live, but just incredible there, and so many other awesome things. Michael, what are some highlights for you?
I mean, let's talk about the keynote because they announced so many cool things. Of course, they announced the RISC Lightspeed, which is basically an AI built into the system, and you can do all sorts of stuff. And you can use regular natural language to accomplish certain tasks. And if you don't know how to do the task, it will basically tell you through the Lightspeed functionality, which is very cool. And then also we found out in Ryan's video, you'll see a clip of this where we found out that it can speak pirate to you. So you can ask it to respond as a pirate and it will, which is just awesome. And they also talked about post-quantum cryptography. So the whole cryptography days of quantum, we're worried about how the quantum state is going to make our existing cryptography kind of worthless. And RISC has already been set up to be ready for the post-quantum era, which is just fantastic to see because that's a very important thing. And having it already, being worked on is great. Combining that with RISC Lightspeed, with the other AI stuff, the Ansible stuff, the OpenShift AI, and all that sort of stuff, there is just a ton of stuff. They made so many different blog posts that they had to create a new blog post to kind of just list all the different things in case you missed it, which they just posted today, I think, on their website. And that's just the Red Hat keynote. That's just like the one keynote they had. So there's tons of other stuff, and we'll have links to all this in the show notes if you want to get more information. But I think that all of that is really cool. Then we also have the stuff from Cove. We already talked about that, but I just want to say, go check out that video. It's crazy. But what's the most important thing is that I feel like we were able to interact with so many different people from so many different companies to create these connections. And it's such a great asset to be able to do because we're able to meet people from, different types of different parts of the country, even different countries, and that we would not have access to otherwise. So I think it was a fantastic experience. And the overall, feel of the thing is kind of like you would imagine it's a super kind of commercialized stuff because a lot of these kinds of conferences are, and it is very company based, but also it's very community based because after each day of the summit, there's also like a reception area in the expo hall, so everybody kind of has like this get together and that sort of stuff and just talk about whatever you want.
It's really clever thing that they did, Jill, is they actually distributed the food because they had food and bar and things after the conference, like drinks and stuff like that. They distributed it across the different booths. So you had to go to different booths to eat and drink and get the stuff, which created opportunities for people to talk about their product or for you to even see their booth, because there's a lot of them there, which I thought was just really clever. It's a small thing at the, when you look at the scale of the Red Hat Summit, but it made a big difference, I think, creating those connections, kind of forcing people to go to different areas and things like that. Also, Michael, you forgot probably the most important thing, that we were labeled as influencers.
Oh, we were influencers.
That was hilarious. And
so what's funny is that we were talking to people at the booths about being podcasters and creators, and every once in a while someone would say, "Oh, you're influencers." I'm like, "Sure. I guess we are."
You can find us on TikTok dancing and
you can
annoying
find Ryan
people in shopping.
for sure.
Yeah.
So Ryan has his live TikTok shop, and he's selling all sorts of stuff from his Rocktopus to
I have never sell Rocktopus. That is a national treasure. Rocktopus is so.
Of course.
No, but really, if you want to get the full kind of experience and rundown of what Red Hat Summit is, Michael Tunnell's channel, Das Geek channel, go check those out, watch those videos, and you'll get the full kind of experience, because we tried to get a little bit of everything. And it's really a great way to experience the conference. And huge shout out to Michael for all the incredible work editing. So if you don't like something in the video, it's Michael's fault. If you love it, it's probably something I suggested that Michael do. And that's
to be clear, Ryan did not give me any guidance whatsoever.
That's a lie. I gave you the best guidance yesterday. So good. So good.
What was that guidance?
Shut up. Linux Kernel 6.15, Jill.
Yes.
What's happening in the Linux kernel?
Woohoo!
What a transition right there.
Thank you.
Linus Torvalds released Linux Kernel 6.15, which has so many improvements, new features, and some very important changes that I wanted to talk about here, including a new REST-based successor to the Nouveau open source driver for NVIDIA GPUs called Nova, which has been introduced as a foundational step. So it's going on. It's starting its journey in the Linux kernel.
That's very cool. But now I'm kind of disappointed, because I'm disappointed for a reason that doesn't make sense. But the reason I'm disappointed is now that people can easily pronounce it. It's just Nova. It was Nouveau, and it's it's spelled in such a way that no one knows. Yeah, exactly. We're losing our pretentiousness, and I feel like that is something we can't afford.
Now I can no longer talk about my knowledge of Nouveau with my pinky out while I drink tea. Now,
there you go.
Now I'm just sipping a Coors Light, slamming one back, talking about Nova. It's very different.
You get it. Exactly. You get it.
Oh, well, here's something I actually am really excited about: better support for Intel Arc GPUs. And I am actually running an Intel Arc A77 here on my podcasting rig. So one of the things they did was the new Intel Xe graphics drivers can now report GPU and VRAM temperatures for Arc GPUs using the awesome HWMon to monitor PC hardware sensors. So now I can monitor its temps playing games and rendering. And that's something I've been able to do on NVIDIA and AMD. So it's really nice to have those temps.
It's a big deal.
It's a big
especially if you're doing any type of overclocking. But even in case you get fan failures or system issues, and you'll be able to monitor that stuff. So
yeah.
Very cool. And also, speaking of Intel, we had a talk with them at the Red Hat Summit, and they had some really cool AI tech they were showing off too. So
nice.
I feel like this is going to be, it's a nice thing to see that Intel is pushing things forward, because previously, for the past couple of years, they haven't really been that forward thinking kind of thing. They've been like
took a back
coasting,
a little bit of a big hit from being kings of the mountain, but. When we were talking to Intel, and they may come on the show as well, which is pretty awesome. But when we were talking to them, they kind of mentioned that the work that they're doing now and the things that they're preparing for, they're very excited about stuff coming out in the future. And I think sometimes when you're king for so long, you can kind of get a little complacent.
Yeah.
And so it's good to have, this is what competition's all about, right? You're going to have the moment where you're at the top, and then you're going to have the moment where somebody comes in and takes that from you. And then you got to get that fighting spirit back to take it back. And I feel like Intel definitely, if they invoke that fighting spirit, can do something. And the reality is the GPU market is wrecked. It is just an absolute mess.
Yeah.
And and the fact that Intel's coming out kind of playing in the, giving you 1440p gaming cards at a very inexpensive price, I think is going to work out very well for them. They're not used to being the low cost one, but that's the position they're having to take now. And I think they're doing a good job kind of switching to that. And they've got some really exciting hardware stuff coming out, which they hinted at a little bit while we were there. So I'm excited to see what comes from Intel.
I'm excited as well. And I also think it's kind of funny because beyond just the stuff that they're doing with all the different tech that they're doing, but they also are a company that I would have never thought would come out with a GPU ever, because it used to be a laughable idea that they would ever do one, because they were just so much into the CPU market. And now that they are pushing forward GPU stuff, and they're not doing it in the sense of like making it the most expensive products ever, I feel like Intel like kind of gets it now, and it's awesome to see them back into like the grind of getting back to where they were.
Yeah, and they just in fact released their Intel Arc Pro series for workstation and for rendering and animation.
Nice.
And
Never thought Intel would make GPUs or NVIDIA would make CPUs. So
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No, it's
Weird
really
times.
awesome. And another cool thing is that ARM and RISC-V hardware support has been expanded for industrial, embedded, and edge devices, including one of my favorite pieces of hardware that I've been wanting to purchase, the Milk 5 Jupyter RISC-V ITX board. So that
rolls right off the tongue.
Yes. That's very exciting. And you guys, can you believe this? There are now drivers for the Apple Touch Bar on Intel MacBook Pros and Apple M1 and M2 MacBook Pros.
There you go. That's
pretty
cool.
So, okay, so real quick, I get so is this saying that there's new drivers for the Touch Bar on those older MacBooks?
Correct.
Or there's Touch Bar drivers for the MacBooks that don't have Touch Bars?
No, there's support for the older generation.
You just start
the newer
touching
generation,
randomly on your
exactly. You just where the function keys would be like, oh, is that a screen here? Or like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
So they got rid of them on their newer generation, but they're still there, and now you can Linux on them. The new driver is actually really quite robust and supports the backlight, the touch interaction, and showing function keys and other information. And I need to remind you, this is very, very important, because on those laptops, all the function keys are in the touch bar, which is something that we need on Linux to do commands.
Or just in general, because when they got rid of the touch bar, they brought back the function keys. So like, they see them as valuable too. But it's just like, I think there's a funny thing is like the touch bar was so hated when it first came out, and now there are people who are like, you could find videos of people are like,
playing Doom on it.
Well, no, they're basically making YouTube videos about how they missed the touch bar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
Yeah, exactly.
I never found it particularly useful. It actually more annoyed me than anything, because the software, and I think it was Apple leaving it up to the software developers to kind of decide what was there when you opened whatever program it was. And I think some programs did well. They put a lot of good shortcuts there. I think a lot of programs did nothing. And so you really had nothing there to utilize. But I like Michael's idea better. If someone can figure out how to make a non-touch bar Mac drivers for touch bar work, maybe if you send an electrical charge throughout the whole MacBook, and then you disrupt it with your finger presses anywhere on the case, that could enact as...
That would probably cause some damage to the computer, though.
Yeah, but we've got to get it working, Michael.
So you got to do an EMP to your laptop in order to get the touch bar stuff to work?
Sometimes you have to break things to get things working.
I like it. Or like a theremin style, where you just have like a, like the be able to, depending on where you put your hand over the laptop, that's where you have like, it affects the
because the electrical charge will be so strong that you'll start getting shocked as you get this.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, Jill. You're trying to be serious. Continue on.
And actually, this is kind of it's a sad thing for me. Support for the 36-year-old Intel 486 processor created in 1989, and support for the first Pentium processors will be removed from the Linux kernel. Very few people are running the modern day Linux kernel on these old machines, except me. And it, reduces maintenance overhead for the Linux kernel developers and time spent on compatibility issues. And so, it really does make sense. But
And on the
now,
bright side, you could always use 614 on the machines if for like a museum purpose. Like if you just want to play with it, you can still do that.
And that's what I will be doing with
What
mine.
really depressed me is they removed support for punch cards. Like, how am I supposed to?
I mean, come on.
How am I supposed to do anything now?
Come on, kernel team. How dare you?
Yeah.
You know.
So now the minimum supported x86 CPU has been updated to the original Pentium or newer, which makes sense.
That makes sense. I'm actually also bummed they got rid of support for my PDP-11. And,
yeah. So I have an older version of Debian on my DEC Alpha. So
Jill's like, I got this. I've already figured it out. Yeah, I like it.
So, but really time marches on, and I knew this day was gonna come. So my 33 megahertz 486DX, which I've shown off here on the show, and my 66 megahertz 486DX2, they let out a sigh. But they'll chug along with an older Linux distro from Debian. So
you guys
not a problem.
at the Linux kernel team upset Jill.
Yeah.
Like,
you should feel ashamed of yourself.
Yeah, and there's also some great hardware support for gaming on Linux with Linux kernel 6.15, like there usually is.
Okay, now they've redeemed themselves, making the gaming better. Okay.
Yes.
Good job.
For you.
Including better support for the Sony PlayStation 5 controllers. And for Xbox controllers, the Turtle Beach Recon and Stealth Ultra controllers have been added to the xpad driver, which is awesome, as well as the PowerA Wired Controller for Xbox. And I have the Turtle Beach one, so I was happy to hear about that.
Yeah, isn't the PowerA controllers the one where you go into the store and you're like, there ain't no way I'm paying $80 for a stupid controller. And then you see the Turtle A one for $36 and you buy it and then you bring it home and you realize it's like,
I mean, I don't know if I've ever actually done a video about this, but like I have, so as a avid gamer of one game, there's a thing that I've learned that different controllers are good at. And some of the manufacturing of these controllers, if you play a game for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of intensity, you can cause damage to the controller just by using it. And I don't mean what Ryan does and throw it against the wall. I don't mean that. I mean,
the only way to test them.
Exactly. I mean, you just play it and you use it. And depending on how you play a game and what buttons you use, I learned that the RB and LB buttons, the bumpers, are not particularly well developed on most controllers. The PowerA lasted like 3 months before it broke. And most of the time they last a year or two. So that is just so information that's basically like most people will not run into using the RB button that much to break it, but it is possible.
Michael.
Well, I think that what's interesting is they make some elite controllers that you can swap out the joysticks, you can replace everything in it. Of course, you pay nearly $200 for the controller to do so. But that fascinates me because it should be standard in all controllers that you can just swap out those parts because honestly, a year or two of just light gaming, you wear down buttons or you start getting drift or things just stop working right. And it's very difficult to replace in the standard controller. The elite ones actually make the parts for and things that you can replace. So I just, it goes back to that repairability thing. We've got to get out of the mode with tech that everything's throwawayable once it stops working. Like you should just be able to. And what's cool with the elite controllers is it's hot swappable, almost like a Frameworks laptop where you literally just undo this bar, it pops out and you slide the new Joy-Con, joystick in and you're ready to go. I think I just said Joy-Con, meant joystick, because that's Nintendo Switch. And they definitely don't make crap repairable because they've had drift issues forever.
And also they have a lot of backlash right now for the Switch 2 where they're making games $90 a piece.
Yeah.
And people are loving that.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because the new Doom Dark Ages came out and I loved it. Like I remember when my videos were really starting to pick up on Linux on my channel. One of the videos was very popular is when I got Doom running on Linux. That was the 2016?
Yeah,
2016, yeah.
2016 version of Doom.
Yeah.
Running on Linux,
and that was before Proton. He's an OG, people.
That's right.
Yeah.
This was before Proton. This was before all that. And that was a pretty popular video of mine. So I was super excited for Dark Ages. In fact, the first thought I had is I want to run it on Linux and do a video on it. But then I saw the price. And I'm like, for a single player game with a story for $80 or 120 for their special edition, I just can't. Like, I cannot pay that kind of money.
People. He can't.
I can't even. On a scale from 1 to even, I can't. And so that's where I was. And I feel like I'm just going to wait for it to come down in price. They're getting insane with the amount of money they want to bring in on these things. And I'm sure it's a great game. I've heard it's a great game. I just can't pay $80 for a game. I just won't do it. But I can tell you the Nintendo 2 Switch is sold out like everywhere.
Mhm.
So apparently there's a lot of people with just money to burn.
I feel like partly Nintendo knows this and they make fewer so they can just say they sold out. They know people are going to get annoyed. So they make like the same thing they did with the Wii. Like the Wii U, the Wii whatever 2, I don't know. The Switch 2. How are they always sold out? Is it because every single time product that they make is always great? Or is it because it's designed this way?
They create like this false scarcity feeling where you're like, oh, I better get my pre-order in or I might not get one.
It still might be scarcity. It might be not false. It might be real, but they just make fewer so that they can say it. They're like, oh, I have to wait. And then they can get it and you can pre-order and all that.
Well, it comes out, the new Nintendo Switch, I think the Friday this week of the week we're recording. And what's interesting about that is some people have gotten their systems early. And those systems are bricked by default. All of the Nintendo 2 Switches are bricked until you connect it to the internet and get the patch update. So they ship them bricked, and then you got to get this patch that happens on day one that will allow it to start working. And that has a lot of people upset as well.
That's a very sketchy thing to do because that shows that their systems can do that. And that means they could do that whenever they feel like it. They could just brick it.
I mean, what if the company was just a little bit greedy? Because we know that barely happens, but every once in a while was like, hey, let's just send a little signal out and 5% of our Nintendo Switches, just as an example, are bricked and they have to rebuy it. You know? Like, just a thought that could kind of happen.
I mean, they made that just doing testing to see if people would. You never know.
Because didn't Apple get caught making phones slower by default so that you were forced to upgrade?
They would make the battery not as either not charge as fast or like do lower performance or something like that. Like they were, and they admitted it, and they admitted they were doing it. It was like, oh, it's for protection of the battery. It's the battery doesn't die. You know, like you could just make it replaceable, Apple. You could make the battery replaceable, and that way it wouldn't matter if it died. But
that's ridiculous, Michael. We have to staple, glue, and solder it in place so that the phone has a good phone feel. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Except for the fact that the same time they also had the phone that you were holding it wrong.
Yeah, of course. Talking about this is actually a perfect segue into the next topic I wanted to cover, which happens to do with Valve. And Valve is actually a company that a lot of us in the Linux and open source world trust a lot. They've done so much for Linux, gaming on Linux with Proton, just incredible, gains because of
just
Valve.
Bringing games to Linux, period. Like I know that back before Steam came out, which was like 2011 or so, I was using Linux just like Jill was, and she can probably confirm this. There were games on Linux.
Yes.
Like 7 of them.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And then Valve brought Steam to Linux so we could play some games. And then we had a couple hundred games. And then we got a couple thousand games. And now we're at 20,000 games. And it just keeps better and better. So I've seen people who are anti-Valve, and I've looked into it. And that's probably the most above board company that I have seen that's in any level of like notoriety and that size. Like, so it's kind of interesting. But Ryan, so what are we talking about this week? What is Valve doing? What do we need to thank Lord Gaben for this time?
Is he knighted, by the way? Is that why they call him Lord Gaben? Did he get knighted?
Maybe. I think it's more of like he's just he's a saint, so they call
Yeah,
him
he's a
over.
saint. And
Yeah.
it was just the meme with the pictures going around with a crown.
It would be interesting to know if he was knighted or not, and that's why they call him Lord Gabe.
Lord Gaben.
Hopefully, we can meet him in a conference someday, and we can knight him ourselves, and we can just make it official because
choose
we
him
have
as our champion.
Gabe. Yes, exactly.
He's our champion. Obviously, what he's done with Steam is incredible, but it turns out that Gabe is exploring a whole new venture with medical implants, and this was completely unknown to me.
First of all, interesting. Let's get into it in a second. However, you said earlier this was a great thing to transition to because we were on the topic of gluing things into phones and soldering it into. So now you're talking about gluing and soldering things into your brain. Is that what you're saying?
Your brain. Well, I think that's an interesting transition, but my transition was more on the lines of companies you trust. Would you trust Nintendo to put an implant in that they could brick? Probably not. But would you trust Valve to do that same implant, that they wouldn't brick it?
Unless I had to, I wouldn't trust any company to put anything in me.
What about me, Michael? What about me personally?
In that case, absolutely not. Not. I have a feeling that you'd put something like the Kung Fu action grip from action figures. You put something in my elbow and just randomly make me punch myself.
Yes, actually, that was my big plan. I sent it to Gabe to see if we could get that done. Mm-hmm. But Gabe co-founded a company called Starfish Neuroscience back in 2019. It's a startup focused on developing brain-computer interface chips, which this company has now emerged out of its stealth mode and is out there in the open, made all the news this week. The first chip announcement, there's a plan to be launched this year, and is designed to record and stimulate brain activity for medical applications like treating neurological disorders. What's interesting about this to me is if people haven't noticed, you would if you met me, that I have a tremble in my hands constantly. They're always kind of shaking a little bit. This is a neurological thing since I was a child that I've had, that I've dealt with. And it doesn't stop me from doing anything. It's just kind of an annoyance that's always there. And actually, people notice it, and I don't even notice it that it's happening. But everyone around me, if you spend enough time, you're like, oh, man, what's wrong with your hands? Why are you trembling? So I think about this type of stuff of how cool would it be if I could have a very non-invasive surgery to have a little thing implanted that could just stop that, maybe just a little bit of a pulse going and stimulating a part of my brain that just stops my hands from shaking. And I could finally be a surgeon, which is what I wanted to be.
That's the only thing that's been holding him back. People.
Yeah, the only thing, not the degree or anything else, just
or knowledge of any kind related to the subject.
Shut up, Michael. It's just the trembly thing.
It's just the trembly.
I would make a terrible surgeon. Do you imagine him zigzagging all over the place?
Yeah. You'd have to have a robot arm.
Even then, he'd be shaking the robot arm.
Yeah.
So I think about this stuff. This is really cool, but obviously mine's a minor annoyance. There are people who have major, issues that they've found these devices implanted on the brain that can send electrical pulses and things, stimulating certain parts of the brain can completely fix, or not completely fix, but keep it at bay and
do some
let them
kind of treatment.
Live normal lives.
I've seen people talk about some of these implants that has been around for a while. I don't really remember which ones, but there was ones that were referring to Parkinson's. So people who have the full body shakes and stuff that they could. Someone demonstrated it where they had full blown Parkinson's. They turned it on, and then they were just normal. They could just act remove normally. And then when they flipped it off, the Parkinson's activated again. And that's a crazy idea. That sort of thing could be, it's kind of mind blowing that that's even possible to do. So you mentioned Parkinson's, really cool,
which is really interesting. They're also talking about things like depression, bipolar disorder, and tumor treatment via targeted heat, prioritizing medical use, of course.
That's major. Yes.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? What an interesting application for that. And Gabe obviously has the financial capabilities to do so, but he also has a ton of knowledge of how to run a company, how to build a company, how to engage your employees. It's one of the few gaming companies that still acts like an OG gaming company in that they the people who were originally working on projects are still there working on projects, versus the way these gaming companies work today is, let's say you were a game designer, you finally get your big break, you're going to work on the new Doom. You finish the game, you spend all of that blood, sweat, and tears, and then the next thing they do is lay you off. And they may bring you back when the next game releases, but that I've hired people from the gaming industry, and that I was like, why are you coming here to work here? And it's because that's just part of the thing. They know they're going to get a contract, they're going to work on the game, they're going to get laid off, and then they may get brought back on the next game. Steam doesn't really do that. They have people on from the original OG team. So my point is,
on for decades now. Yeah.
Yeah. He knows how to build a company. He knows how to run a company. He knows how to treat employees. And he's taking all this experience with him to do this startup. And I don't know. I know Elon Musk is over there with doing something similar again with, I think they call it Neuralink. But I trust Gabe a little more.
Yeah.
If the choice between the two is Elon and
Absolutely.
Gabe, it's easily Gabe. Yeah.
Between the two billionaires, I choose Gabe as my champion for an implant, just because I just feel like he's a little more stable. You know,
I feel like he's not only stable in terms of business, but also the stuff he launches. He's not launching stuff just because, you know, there's effort that's been put into it, and the whole idea of like sometimes they'll test things and then see if it works, and if it doesn't, they'll make better versions and stuff like that. And the example is in the terms of the gaming world, they technically did the Steam machine before the Steam Deck, and they realized that the Steam machines would not work, so they stopped doing them. And then they started perfecting their own system to create the Steam Deck. And then now the Steam Deck is so successful that there are competitors on the market that have better screens, more powerful hardware, supposedly better in every facet of hardware, and yet are still being outsold heavily by the Steam Deck. And it's just because it's a better experience. And now there are reports that the devices like the Legion Go S, I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Where
dark
it has,
purple one.
Yeah. Yes. Where it has SteamOS and Windows, like it's like the only example that has both of them on the same hardware. And the SteamOS one just blows the Windows out of the water. And
it's cheaper.
And it's cheaper. That's true too.
Yeah.
But it's crazy because the exact same hardware is better on SteamOS, and it just shows the effort that's being put into it from Valve to make all these different things, and they're doing things very carefully. And I think that is a good example for a company to do something like this. You don't want them to be risky. You want them to be careful.
You know how like obviously what is, you know, with the whole rockets that can be grabbed by two chopsticks and stuff, amazing things have come out of Elon's company thanks to his amazing engineers and stuff like that. But he also has the idea of failing forward. So rockets blow up. It's like, well, what have we learned from it? I don't want that in I don't want that methodology.
Yeah, exactly.
In an implant. Like, well, it blew up Ryan's brain. What did we learn?
Beta tester.
What did we learn from his exploding brain?
Yeah.
We have now proven that minds can be blown.
Wow. Wow, Michael. So they're looking for partners. If you work in an industry that does wireless power transfer, which I've seen some of these specifically with micro robots that they are putting inside of people to do healing or even monitoring, that they have kind of a battery pack that sits on outside of your chest and it powers the robots that are inside that are very, very small. Cool things like that. So if you have any company or ideas on that, they're looking for partners there. Neural interfaces and communication systems to further develop their technology. And obviously, they're focused on the right thing. I think you start with the medical applications and build out. But eventually, I think this is going to go into the augmentation style of, will humans be able to, it's a question, keep up with, you know, the robots that are coming out, the androids that are coming out. And so with that,
will we become cyborgs?
You may need to become augmented to join the workforce.
Augmented. That's a nice way of saying cyborg.
Yes. You have to be augmented. Jill, would you get augments?
I probably would eventually, but it would have to be tried and tested.
Yeah. I could see a RoboCop Jill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, titanium.
Or like a Winter Soldier style.
I've gone in driverless cars, Waymos. So
Yeah, that is just as crazy as putting something in your brain. I agree. Yeah. nearly the same thing. It's great. No, Jill. Okay, so Jill, you've talked about, I'm just curious, you've talked about the fact you're partially blind. If there was an implant that could bring back your full vision, would that be something today that you would actually go do?
Yeah, definitely. Because mine is optic nerve, and that's an area they haven't been able to fix, with blindness. So that would, I would do it. I would do it. I would be a beta tester for that if I could see really well.
It's really interesting because I think when you have that, I think people think to themselves who are perfectly healthy, would I ever do this? And their immediate answer is no. But when you have kind of situations that you want to fix, your body, like in my case, doesn't work the way I want it to all the time.
Yeah.
Then you're like, hey, I might be interested in something like this more so initially. And then, as it gets tested, and obviously I wouldn't want to be a test case for the thing, but once it's out there for a while and it's been tried and true, maybe I'll look at it then. Their first chip records brain activity from 16 channels at 18.75 kilohertz, in case you want to tune in, using 32 electrodes, offering high precision neural recording.
You want to tune your radio to the frequency of your brain? Yeah. That way you can listen to your thoughts.
I think the thing that a company doing this really has to prove is obviously that there are a lot of people that have gone and tested this thoroughly, but also like, what are the capabilities of this device from being hacked? Right? Is there an upload interface, or is this something where it's a module that you can only update if you're physically connecting it to another piece of machine? There's just a lot of trust problems.
Well, there's also like a factor of like, these are tiny little pieces of like, the chips are like super tiny. And one of the things says that it's got no battery. It doesn't need a battery, which is fascinating. But also that means that there's no way to charge it or whatever. And it makes me wonder, like, how do you update it? How do you connect it and whatever? Do you have, I would imagine Bluetooth. So you'd have to be like, the limit of Bluetooth is how close you have to be to something. But maybe it's like NFC, where you have to be like really close and you put something right up to your forehead or your temple or something that gets, activated or whatever. And maybe that does something. Who knows? But I'm also wondering, is it going to be like how the Matrix is, where you have this giant thing in the back of your head that you have a little port?
No.
I mean, like,
that would be kind of cool. You jack in, you're saying in your head for the RFID chip, and I was thinking, like, if you put the payment chip in your head instead of like your hand, how people put it in their hand?
Yeah, put it in their hand. And you just kind of like,
you have to put your head up to the credit card machine. Wow, Michael, I don't think your company will take off, but I like what you're thinking.
I was not suggesting that in any way whatsoever.
Well, once it becomes,
I would be like, put it in your knuckle right here. That way you can fist bump the payment system.
So once it becomes as ubiquitous as like putting in a chip in your cat or your dog, then we'll trust it more.
I don't put chips in my cat or dog. Am I supposed to?
Yeah.
They prefer Cheetos, not chips.
Cheetos.
So you can find them if they get lost.
Oh, you're right. The little lost and found chip. That's what you're talking about. Yeah,
it's very common.
Yeah, that's
most
true.
everyone does, and it's a good thing they did. They do, especially recently here with our LA fires. That's how people got their animals back.
Oh,
some of them have like GPS coordinates and stuff in them.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So it's a very interesting thing. So we could put a GPS into Ryan. That way he knows where he is all the time.
Like, Ryan, turn left. Michael, how did you know? You're on another state. That's crazy. No, I think this is very cool stuff. I'm happy Gabe's working on it. I think it will be interesting to see what the company's co-founding comes up with in this case. And obviously, I think there's exploration here eventually for gaming and all kinds of applications. But I love they're starting with what I think is the most important application of this, which is medical, improving people's lives and that type of thing. So very cool stuff from them.
Yep.
Well, Michael, we are at the end of the show.
We're pretty much at the end of the show, but I think that we should take a little bit of time just to mention this one thing because of how crazy Yeah, so we were at Red Hat Red Hat Summit all week, and we missed a lot of stuff. Well, but we got to see a lot of cool stuff at the summit. But there was some news that came out that's just like, what? And that is Microsoft announcing that WSL is going open source. And you're like,
what?
I'm still what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What? It's kind of interesting. It's interesting to see them doing this, and mad respect to Microsoft for finally doing something that isn't making people cringe constantly. Yeah. So that's good. However, it's not completely open source. There are things that are still proprietary.
Come on, Windows.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's got to have proprietary blobs in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's a Microsoft thing. Of course it is. So like some DLLs and some other like exe files and whatever are not going to be completely open, but it is what it is. Not everything, we wouldn't have expected them to do it anyway. That would have blown our minds completely in that sense. We wouldn't even need these chips to do it. We wouldn't need Elon's chips to do that. But but these are, it's really cool to see it happening anyway, because, Microsoft open sourcing stuff is great. But here's the thing, Microsoft, if you really want to truly prove that you have turned a new leaf, you don't have to open source it. Just make Excel and the rest of Office work on Linux and we're good.
Yeah, just make it work on there. That would be you did it for Apple. Well, arguably your biggest competitor, but you won't.
And we're supposed to be buddies, Microsoft. We're supposed to be buddies.
You have signs that say you heart Linux. So
exactly.
Microsoft makes its money because of Linux.
Yeah.
You were at the Red Hat Summit. I mean, you're supposed to be our buddies.
Had a big booth there too,
Yeah.
This was very cool. I appreciate the fact that they're open sourcing stuff. I think this helps them, obviously, because now they can get a lot more people who are going to work on, customize, and improve WSL. They've taken it a long way from where it started back in 2016. For those not aware, WSL is basically now a Linux kernel inside of essentially Windows system. So you can stay in Windows and still run a Linux kernel, and with some modifications and a lot of setting changes and stuff, you can get GUI applications to even run using WSL2, which came out in 2019. So, it used to be, I think, just a virtual machine, essentially, kind of like
it was an emulation.
Now there's a whole kernel in there, which, is an improvement.
Yeah. And, they did also open source their text editor, Edit. So you could configure your autoexec.bat and config.sys now using open source.
Nobody wants to use Edit for that.
Brian, this is great. We need another text editor.
That's what I've been saying. Like, if Linux really is serious about taking over the desktop, we need another text editor. What the heck? Finally.
Yeah, about time. Now we can have Microsoft Edit versus Emacs versus Vim versus Nano versus Micro versus Pico versus Sublime Text versus
I'm impressed you've been able to name
VS Code versus I guess we could still have Atom as Atom RIP versus versus Kate versus Kwrite versus Gedit
Xedit
versus Xedit. There you go.
Yeah.
Notepad++. Did you get that
Joe
one?
is another
Notepad++ is basically just on Windows, but I think you can do it in a Snap or something. But there's also Notepad -, and there's also Notepad QQ, and then there's also just regular Notepad if you have, or LeafPad as well.
Yeah.
There's quite a few, I think. I'm probably missing some, but I think I nailed most of them.
Listen, here's some life advice. I'm going to give a life tip here. Put down your text editor and live in the moment. Stop always having to have the text editor in your face, ruining every moment when you go to concerts, when you're going to events, you're sitting there with your text editor out. Put it away and live in the moment. That's the life
Some
tip.
people are at these concerts and these events, and they're having their phone out to record it, to record a thing that they'll never watch ever again. And just experience it. But for those who have the text editor, actually, mad respect. If you could do something with a text editor while at these kinds of things, mad respect. Don't listen to Ryan.
You see someone at a concert typing it. Chris from Jupiter.
They're running Git and Git pull, and then
he pulled Vim out on his phone. So when we were at the ball game, so that's pretty impressive. There, he's got Vim everywhere he goes. He was taking notes for his show right there.
I mean, he was using Nano, I think.
Was it Nano?
I'm pretty sure it was Nano.
Yeah, he likes Nano.
Yeah. He's a Nano purist.
Rookie.
Refined beginners.
I'm Vim for life. You know what I mean? Vim for life.
That's Vim because you can't get out of it. Once you're in, you're stuck.
You can't get out, so you're there for life. That's how it works. All right. Well, a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces. And it's because of you we got to go to Red Hat Summit. That's and enjoy all that. Because if you all weren't listening to this show, which we had no idea why you're still listening to this show, because we're crazy.
It's because we have the greatest show ever created. We create the best show, period. The greatest show that has ever been made by 3 individuals named Ryan, Michael, and Jill about Linux.
Yeah. And if you go to tuxdigital.com/Discord, you can experience the community around Linux as well. There we have a whole community for you to hang out with, and we have it on good measure that if you go in there and say I love Linux, you'll immediately have thousands of new friends. So you're one of those people like, hey, I wish I had some friends. Well, go to tuxdigital.com/Discord, join the Destination Linux group, say I love Linux, and now you have something in common with everybody in that room.
And it's been proven. We made the statement on the show before without having tested it ourselves, and now it's been tested and mother approved, just like cereals.
Ragu? Oh,
I don't know. There's some
Chef Boyardee?
Whatever that
Jeff?
No, it's kids tested, mother approved. What is that? Some kind of
athlete's foot?
No, it's like some kind of cereal. Why was athlete's
cereal,
foot?
Yeah.
What? That's not at all a thing that you want.
Oh, anyways, how can people join up and become members of this show, Michael?
If you want to avoid athlete's foot, what you need to do is become a patron of this show. And that is by going to tuxdigital.com/membership and be sure to become a patron so you can get a bunch of perks. Like you can watch the show live for some reason, and you can get unedited episodes of the show. We have tons of great stuff that gets cut in the editing room floor. So you could get a bunch more. This show is actually much bigger, slightly bigger than you would get on the regular versions. And there's so much great content that you might not be able to get if you're not a patron. And getting the patronship or membership as a patron.
We're like the Nintendo Switch too. There's only so many memberships available, and we're actually out of stock right now. Now, if you keep
out of stock
the site and refreshing, you might be able to get in. You got to try.
Yeah, if you go and you search and it's not available, just know that you just need to refresh. And if it is there, remember, you're lucky because it might not have been there.
Exit right then, because you won't have another chance.
Don't take the lucky the situation for granted. You need to just do it right then. Go to tuxdigital.com/membership, click on the thing to sign up, and if it's there and it lets you, you won it. You won the opportunity.
Don't look
to become
a gift goat in the mouth. That's the old saying.
That's not the saying, but we're going to move on and say it is. Go to tuxdigital.com/store and get a bunch of perks. You get a bunch of swag, but you also get a perk as a patron of a discounts. Yeah. And that's actually not something in the store, but maybe it should be at some point. Yeah. That is definitely not something what even is that?
It's a water sensor for...
Of course we would have that in the store, Ryan. Why wouldn't we? tuxdigital.com/store, where you can get a bunch of cool stuff except for everything Ryan ever holds up.
And make sure to check out all the amazing shows here on Tux Digital, including the DOS Geek channel and Michael Tennell's channel, and as well as Twill. And we have an entire network of shows to fill your whole week with geeky goodness. And head to tuxdigital.com to keep those Linux penguins marching. Woohoo!
Everybody, have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Love you,
Case
Bob.
closed.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I forgot the X-Files thing. I forgot about that. I'm glad we came to the bottom of this, and the truth was out there, and we found it.
We found the truth.
Yes. Aliens are in the ocean, everybody, in case you were wondering. And we're all prompts. And the Earth's flat. And Earth's actually on the back of the sea turtle.
And this entire show is just AI.
and Jill's actually mean in person.
Oh.
No, it's
You
not
have
true. That one's
of
actually
all
not
the
true.
things we said that we were like had to backtrack. You're like, no, I can't.
Not that the Earth's flat or
okay.
anything. It's that Jill's.
Yeah, we can't go that far, Ryan. We can't go that far.
Okay, I took it too far that time. You know.
Oh.
But you got it. You fixed it. It's okay. See you next week, everybody.
See ya.